Welcome one and all to the Gaming Codex, the show where I try to explain to you all the myriad of definitions of terms that relate to video games and the video games industry. And today's term is one of the gaming genre that some may say is dead, while some say it is a zombie, or at least full of them. It's the adventure. And what would be the general definition of adventure? Well, that would be a video game in which the player assumes the role of a protagonist in an interactive story driven by exploration and puzzle solving. That's one of them. The other one I got from Adventure Gamers, which is a website dedicated to adventure games. All of them. That definition would be a game with a focus on puzzle solving within a narrative framework, generally with few or no action elements. Other popular names for the genre are graphic adventure or point-and-click adventure, but these represent only part of a much broader diverse range of games. These definitions do a serviceable job at describing what an adventure game is. It's one of the oldest genres in existence, one of the oldest types of games ever made, right along with Pong and Tennis for Two and the other ones, and Asteroids with Space or whatever the first one was, I forgot. It's a game where you explore, where you try to solve problems, but not just for the sake of the problems. There is actually a reason for them to be there. There is a story in which you are deeply involved, a story that you discover, that you influence, a story that revolves around your actions, your choices sometimes, your decisions. Now sure, for the most part it is quite a linear and unchangeable story, but it's there, and you progress through it by exploring new locations, discussing things with characters sometimes, and often trying to solve intricate puzzles. Adventure games began as simple text affairs, though to be clear, text adventures are a bit of a different kind of animal compared to graphic adventures. They are sort of the same kind of genre, but they're different takes on the idea, and I'm gonna get into that in a later show. From the humble beginnings of Colossal Cave, and then going through all sorts of evolutions, from Zork to that haunted house game, to King's Quest, Space Quest, Maniac Mansion, Monkey Island, and many others, adventure games have been an unending source of joy for the world, and at one time they were the de facto best-selling genre. Adventure games like the Seven Guests and Mist were responsible for the CD-ROM becoming widely adopted by just about everyone, because you needed one to play these games and everybody wanted to play these games. And there just may be a chance that adventure games can be the killer app for VR too, since the perspective of putting you in that world immersively is one that can actually add a lot to the experience of an adventure game. Of course, that would actually require someone to fund one. Now, what is the popular definition of adventure game? Well, there's about 3 of them, so I'll just list them off. A game where you walk around a lot and don't really do anything, a bunch of puzzles, or a hidden object game. These, for the most part, aren't adventure games. Walking around and doing nothing, that's a, what was it called, a first-person experience, which is not an adventure game, because an adventure game does have a story, one that you experience not just by finding notes around. It does have some puzzles, or at least problems to be solved, no matter if they take the form of something that's sort of mechanical, or dialogue puzzles, or things that are a bit more abstract. Also, hidden object games are not adventure games, because there's no puzzle element in finding the hidden object, it's just your skill at finding objects. That being said, there are a few hidden object games that do at least try and have a narrative, though usually everything is delivered to you in the form of a visual novel. Visual novels, by the way, also not adventure games or games. They're visual novels. They're like opening a book and looking at pictures with text. Still more of a game than the rest here though, but still not a game. Sadly, the adventure game did not really have a very good last decade, as some people sort of trumpeted their demise about 20 years ago. They went through a very steep ascension, where they became the #1 selling genre. Then they dropped off a bit in favor of the RTS. Then the FPS came along, and then the MMO came along, and then the action game just grew, and never stopped growing. And now, mainly thanks to stuff like Kickstarter and a few companies that actually still try and publish these and make these, the adventure games can still exist. Indies are responsible for a lot of the current adventure games we have, but being indies, don't expect their games to be all that popular. So in the public mind, adventure games are they're simplified affairs, ones with puzzles that are basically not there, like the Walking Dead series, where you just go through the motions and fundamentally you don't really achieve much. Yeah, your choices, the things you do, affect little things, but no, they don't really change much in the big scheme of things. Now, what is the marketing definition of adventure games? Well, that'll be none. Adventure games are dead to most companies, the big ones. They don't matter. The genre is completely kaput. Though, to be fair, there are still a few publishers that at least try to put out adventure games. Activision gets a lot of flack for being evil, but they did fund a new King's Quest series. The writing in it was kind of but the puzzles were nice. That being said, you're not gonna see any publisher actually put in big bucks in an adventure game anymore. Adventure games used to cost money, like the big budget ones used to cost a lot of money, because you would have name recognizable voice actors in them. You would have often FMV sequences that took actually time and money to film. You would have beautiful scenery, beautiful graphics. You would have so many things that again required budget. And when you don't have a lot of budget, you end up with stuff like Mobius, or when you do have a lot of budget and you give it to people that live in San Francisco, you get the Broken Age thing. But like I've said, indies and crowdfunding is capable of bringing back the genre bit by bit with new games that are at least interesting. So closes this page of adventures in the Gaming Codex. Come back next time when we're gonna talk about something that's a bit more technical. See you then.